Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Bre Beatty on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from North Dakota, which, I mean, she's originally from Las Vegas. So she's got some type of mental disorder that we're going to try to, get her to talk about during this podcast for moving, from Las Vegas to North Dakota. But yeah, she's a former college athlete and she's getting into bodybuilding now, and we're just here to talk about her health and fitness journey, and just talk all things health and fitness. And most importantly, she's our current guest. Bre, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Ryan. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that as well. And I ask this to every single guest, even though you're only a state away for the first time. What is the weather like in North Dakota today?
Today, I say it's beautiful. Most other people say they're probably dying, but it's really hot. There's like a little bit of humidity, but not too much to where you just walk outside and you're drenched. So I say it's good. Nice little breeze. There's no bugs quite just yet, so I'm happy as a clam.
She's from Nevada, everyone, so anything like under 110 is fine by those, which I never got. I had a friend that moved there, and he's like, yeah, it's 120 degrees today, and I'm going out for a walk, and I was like, you're an idiot. Like, what do you, like, that is for me, just being born and bred in the upper Midwest. I mean, this is unseasonably hot at this time. It's around like 90 degrees here too, where I can only do my walks really at night. But yeah, like you said, the bug situation. I mean, yeah, it's not so. I guess that's the one benefit of living in like Nevada is that you don't really have. I mean, you really have like scorpions and stuff like that, really, but that's like few and far between, really. You just have like desert kind of. But anyway, so first of all, before we get into your health and fitness journey, why don't you tell us what inspired you to move all the way from cozy little Las Vegas to all the way up in North Dakota?
So I was recruited by the NDSU softball team when I was a junior in high school. I actually was injured at the time. I had a torn ACL, and they recruited me just from recruiting videos that I put up on YouTube. I had a really killer sophomore season. I had like I don't know, like 14 home runs or something, and I just kind of had the unlucky draw, and I tore my ACL. And they came out to watch my team play to look at our catcher, and they saw my name on the roster, saw my average, but saw I wasn't playing, so they just kind of looked me up, and then we got to talking. I came out on a visit, and I just I never really minded the cold. I grew up with a lot of family trips to Utah. As a kid, we had a cabin up in Duck Creek, and it's just like that area of Utah is really well known for snowmobiling. So I grew up just a sled head. In addition to softball, so I didn't really care about the cold. I just loved like the culture, how like everything was kind of about the college and just like the girls and just the team and how you got to travel about half of the season because everywhere up here is too cold to play. So I got to see so many cool things because of NDSU softball, because of the places we had to go travel to play that I wouldn't ever be able to see in a lifetime. So that's kind of what brought me up here. And then what kept me up here is my boyfriend. And now I am working as a personal trainer at Metroflex Gym Fargo.
Well, I do got to ask, when you're talking about cold, I mean, there is a difference between Utah cold and North Dakota, Minnesota cold, because like when it reaches to the cold where like the gasoline in your car freezes so you can't even like use your car, that like when people say that they know the cold, especially like people on the East Coast, I was like, you didn't live through the polar vortex of like 2 years ago when I had to work outside when it was like negative 70 degrees. Okay. And that's like, anyone
Oh,
that
that
says
was
like
so
cold,
bad.
it's like, yeah. Oh, and so I worked at UPS and I had to go outside for an hour and check all the trucks and make sure that everything was like all the packages were in there, 5 layers of everything. And it's still, even that night, my legs were just basically frozen where I couldn't even fall asleep because my legs were just so cold. And I had wrapped up in like 5 layers of blankets when I got home. And it was, yeah, that was bad. But
I went out one time during the polar vortex to let my dog outside, and the wind was blowing, and it was blowing tears out of my eyes, and my eyes started to freeze shut. And at like that point, I was like, maybe I should apply for some jobs on the West Coast
that
again.
same thing happened to me where my eyes closed and then my eyelashes froze together when I closed for a little while. But yeah, for anyone that wants to know what that's like, it literally hurts to breathe when it's that cold. Like you can't, like, breathing hurts your throat and stuff because it's so, yeah. But before we depress everyone with that, why don't you give us your backstory on how you went from softball and started to say, hey, this health and fitness lifestyle and bodybuilding is something that I want to look into.
I saw how much it changed my life for me. So when I was younger, I was this big around. I had no structure on me whatsoever. I remember being in the lunch line to get pizza on like a Friday because in middle school, like you always get pizza on Fridays. And some dude like walked up to me and like went and like pinched my arm to see what was there, and I was just like, excuse you? And then my dad was actually a bodybuilder in his day, and I told him that story, and he's like, yeah, we need to fix that. So he actually kind of got me started on all of it. He taught me how to lift. He had me drinking like weight gainer shakes so I could put on muscle and just general weight because I had just nothing to me. And I honestly think it was the biggest difference for me as an athlete because I'm a very trained athlete. Like I'm kind of that, the videos of like the baby giraffes. Yeah, that's me doing something I don't know how to do. So, I just saw through my own experience how big of an impact strength and conditioning had, and I want that for other young athletes. I think that is kind of a very big maker to break it. Like you can have as much talent, but if you don't have the strength to prevent injury or like, for pitching, like pitch that extra couple miles an hour or hit the ball over the fence versus hitting it to the fence. I think it's a huge game changer. And then just in general, getting more people in the gym, like especially women. Like I feel like women are still very afraid of the weight room, and because it's an intimidating place if you have never been like put in that situation where you're like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna go to the gym, but like the first image you get of people going to the gym are meatheads and stringers, and it's not like that's completely untrue. There are those people there, but like for the most part, everyone in a gym is just a normal person just trying to get better at something or make something better for themselves. And I want to bring more awareness to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for me personally, I was somewhat like that, except I was a little bit bigger. But I'm 6'3", and I've been 6'3" since I was basically in 7th grade. I was that one kid that got really, really tall, really, really quick, and then just like stopped growing. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But on top of that, I mean, when you are getting started working out, I always love to talk genetics on this podcast where I mean, so many people are online. They say, "Oh my God, I want her abs. I want his arms. I want their back." And I just want to strangle them and just be like, "You do not understand that if you do exactly what they're doing, you are still not going to see those results." I mean, it's just ridiculous. But whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really takes off, and they have that one body part that just drags behind it. They have to train to oblivion. For me, my back was the one thing that really took off, but my legs and my lower body being so tall were just absolutely shot. Where I've always still to this day made the joke I could inject pure muscle into my legs or calves, and they wouldn't gain an ounce of muscle at all. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Hamstrings and calves, 10 out of 10. Like especially being a bikini girl. For my first bodybuilding show, I've always had the hardest time getting my hamstrings to grow. Calves, it's one of those things where you have to hit them every single day if you want them to grow. And realistically, who wants to do that? Nobody. So I know I probably should be better about it, but I mean, it is what it is. I also know that, I'm going to have limitations because everybody has something that limits them unless if you want to go on, the drug path, which not looking down on it is just not the path I want for myself, but yeah.
Oh, I'm always completely honest. It's like 90% of the guests that I have on are doing at least something, and then there's guests like you where like I can tell like you're not on something, and I'm not even gonna get into that because it's honestly none of my business. But hey, more power. I mean, you still got to work hard and stuff like that. I will say that about that. I honestly don't have.
I will say that's the biggest misconception though, because I do know people who they're on stuff, but like I also know people that are on stuff that don't do anything and they're wondering why nothing
Yep.
happens. Like I had a high school kid I was training and he was telling me that his buddies were taking SARMs just to try to hit a 225 bench max for their weightlifting class. And I'm like, what are these kids doing? Like, do they not know the repercussions of this? Like, that's not how this works. Like, you still need to go to the gym and eat right for that stuff to even do anything for you, anything good for you at the very least.
Yeah, and that's just especially for I mean, yeah, it's like first of all, what is that even gonna do for you if you hit a 225 bench? That doesn't I mean, unless you're doing I don't get I've heard stories like that too. There are guys at my high school that were I mean, I'm not sure that they're on something, but I'm pretty sure they were just doing it just to do their lifts. And I was like, well, you play football. Why aren't you doing it to like max? It's like, what is a 250
Yeah.
bench gonna do for you if you're a lineman? You should just be able I just don't. I honestly do not get that. But when you when you were getting started in bodybuilding, I mean, you have that background where your dad was a bodybuilder too, but were there any reservations that you had about the sport? Because in the general public, I mean, so many people have these myths about bodybuilding that aren't true, but did you have any reservations about getting started in bodybuilding, or was it something that you just wanted to completely dive into?
I wanted to completely dive into it. I followed a lot of people who did bodybuilding. I've always admired the sport and the aesthetic and just like the hard work and everything for it. My dad, like I said, he was a bodybuilder and his brother was also a bodybuilder. So I've grown up around it my whole life. I had never grown up around like the female side of it, so that was completely new to me. And just the biggest shock to me was the financial aspect of female bodybuilding, between like the cost of the suits and the jewelry and the tan and getting your hair and makeup done and the heels and like the posing classes and doing your dishes so you can in your heels so you can learn to walk in just basic walk in your heels. Like that was the biggest shock factor for me. But as far as reservations go, like I was just ready to dive into it, especially after coming off of like just being done being an athlete. Like I think people get, the post athlete blues when they're done with their sport, right? That was mine. I was like, I need something competitive I need to do, and Lord knows I'm going to end up in a hospital if I do CrossFit or powerlifting. So let's try bodybuilding. I mean, who can't be a little bit better with your diet? This is kind of taking it to the extreme, so I might as well give it a shot. And I loved it. I mean, obviously, there's parts of the process that aren't so pretty, but it was a completely I guess you could say life changing experience for me, because I kind of found a whole new level of discipline and mental toughness and just strength that I never knew was in there. I mean, like when you're a college athlete, like your coaches put you through some, for a lack of better terminology, mindful. um, just and it builds you up, it makes you stronger, but it is mindful, needless to say. And but like this is you doing it to yourself, not somebody else doing it to you, which I think is the biggest difference. And like you're willingly putting yourself through all of this, and that's what like really kind of brings out like that last bit of strength out of you. I is my thought process, at least, behind it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that's just, yeah, I mean, and plus with bodybuilding, I mean, I think it's the most extreme sort of mental game that you can ever put on yourself, because I always tell people, if you can go through a prep, I mean, you can go through really anything. And what was that mental adjustment like for you? Because like, yeah, being a college athlete, you have to have an incredible mental strength as well. But I mean, just being a bodybuilder and going through a prep, I mean, what was that like for you, just sort of realizing that, like, hey, I thought my college days were hard as an athlete. Now it's, taking it up a whole different, to a whole different level.
It was like the hardest part was other people not getting it, dealing like, oh well, do you want to like go out for dinner? And it's like, well, I mean, yeah, I can go out with you, I just can't eat anything. And, oh, where's the fun in that? Or my boyfriend getting drunk and baking cookies 2 weeks out from my show after I asked him repeatedly not to. And he goes, why? It's just food. And I'm like, yeah, it's just
First of
food,
all, who gets
right?
who gets drunk and bakes? First of all, that's what I'm gonna say. You know what
Yeah,
I'm gonna do? You know
I'll
what
grant
I'm
you
gonna
that.
do now that I'm sloshed? I'm gonna start baking now again. Yeah, I know
I
that's
think part of it
hilarious.
was he knew it would tick me off, and we push each other's
Yeah.
buttons all the time. That's just the kind of relationship we have. But yeah, I'll have to bring that up. Hey, who makes cookies when they're drunk? Like, why didn't you make like mac and cheese or ramen or something?
Maybe secretly deep down he wants to be a chef, and he's just suppressing it. Who knows? But yeah, that's that. Yeah, that is awesome. And yeah, just that whole mental game. But I mean, we're talking nutrition too, and that is the number one thing where people just do not understand that. And what were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you had to make when you really started to take things seriously?
Measuring my food, honest to God, like that. Like the second I was told I had to buy the food scale, it was like, oh, we're that serious now. Like I always ate pretty healthy, what my biggest thing was always like making sure I was pushing protein and pushing carbs, just from like the general like get big mindset that I always kind of had to have throughout my high school and college career. And then now it's like, okay, like the food skills getting brought out. Now I actually know how much I need to eat and how much I am eating. Holy crap. Like, and at first, it was a lot of food going through like my bulking process. It was a lot of food. I was like, holy crap, like how am I going to get all this food down? And then when it started prep, it started getting more comfortable. And like those first couple months, you're so motivated and you're just ready to go. And like, it's not quite that hard just yet, because like you're still around maintenance, you're just upping cardio, making little adjustments. Like then it kind of gets to, okay, like I'm a little hungry, nothing's too bad yet. And then it gets to, I'm starving and I'm eating 2 jars of pickles a day to try to like just make myself not feel hungry. Like I literally ate a jar of pickles a day probably a couple weeks out going into my show, and my coworkers at the time told me I was smelling like vinegar, and that's when I was like, yeah, this probably isn't good for me either. I'm bringing my blood pH down a notch with all these pickles.
Yeah, hey, yeah, but yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's something that a lot of people just don't understand as well, as just, that nutrition aspect. I mean, that's the one thing that I think really just separates so many people. But I mean, the most shocking thing for me when I started this podcast, I was aware of it, but I didn't know how important it was, is that for so many of these athletes, posing is the hardest thing for them. I mean, it's harder than your workout, it's harder than your nutrition. I compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Very young, I guess you could say. I haven't hired a posing coach yet. I didn't think I had to. I probably should have for my first show, but my posing experience this far has been, honest to God, watching videos of Isa Piccini and Angelica Tissera, watching their posing, because I've always loved their posing, and just like video, like I would take screen recordings of their posing, and then I would take a video of myself posing, and I would try to compare the two, and I think I did a pretty good job for trying to teach myself as much as I could. And then when I was probably 2 months out from my show, I drove to Wisconsin to get a workout in with my coach. She's Haley Wagner. She's amazing, but I
She's
drove
coming on the
8
podcast. She's coming on the podcast in the next week or so. We've been trying to
Oh,
finalize
no
a
way.
date. Yeah.
Hi,
Yep.
Haley. No, she's awesome. She's the shit. I love her. I love having her as my coach. But I drove 8 hours to Wisconsin just to like spend the night in Wisconsin. I got a workout with her that morning. She worked on my posing with me, and then just right after the workout, she annihilated me with leg day, mind you. Like I was in shock, just in complete shock, and then decided it was a good idea afterwards to just drive the 8 hours back so I wouldn't have to pay to spend another night in Wisconsin during COVID. And I
First of all, who
probably
wants to be in
about fell
Wisconsin?
out of
Who
the
wants to be in
car.
Wisconsin in the first place anyway? That's all I'm going to say. I mean, it's Wisconsin. I mean, come on.
I mean, there's more scenery there than Fargo at the very least.
But I'm a Minnesotan, so it's you're supposed to hate Wisconsin, so that's
That's true.
I
Yeah.
mean, and
Well,
plus, I mean, there's just a bunch of drunk alcoholics. Everyone knows that and stuff like that. And you're like, go eat your cheese, stuff it where the sun don't shine, stuff like that, And anyone else in the states, Wisconsin is that one state where you can actually legally drink beer. If you're 14, you can drink alcohol as long as you have an adult with you at a bar.
I'm for it.
Hey, I mean, make them dumber, I guess. Hey, it's fine. It's fine for me. But yeah, I'm about an hour away from Hudson, so
Hey,
sometimes I
I'm
go
all
over there.
about survival of the fittest. So
Yeah, and hey, that's why there's not that many people in Wisconsin. Okay, I got my Wisconsin dig out of there, and I'm just getting it out of the way because Haley's when she's come on the podcast, she's one of those guests where she's just so jacked that it's gonna make me feel bad about myself. So I got to make myself feel a little bit better in other ways. But yeah, that is awesome, and I mean. Yeah, especially with there's so many aspects of this sport that people just do not understand and get. And you were talking about the heels before, and that's the one thing that I would have never guessed in a million years too, is that the heels are a hard part as well. So you had to like wear them around and walk them around and stuff, and that's just a
oh
whole
yeah.
different thing. But what overall, what was that like? How long did it take before you feel that like you actually got where you actually able to walk a line in heels?
Oh God. I'd say like 2 straight months. Two solid months of like walking on carpet, mind you, because my townhouse at the time was all carpeted, with heels on, probably risking breaking an ankle with my dogs running into me nonstop, doing dishes, doing laundry with them, changing clothes in them, like just literally anything I could do if I was home was like in those heels. Like there was a time where I used to work for a manufacturing company before I became a personal trainer, and I worked night shift, so there was like no other people there. So if we had a down night, I brought my heels to work with me, and I would practice walking up and down in the hallway with them if we had like some downtime where I could do that. And people would just look at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Shh, I gotta practice. I'm about to be naked on stage in a sparkly bikini with some heels on. It's gonna be a real good time." And there was definitely a time, I think, in prejudging for my show, like the day of my show, where I almost fell because like I think it was on like one of my transition poses, like going from the back to the front, and I felt like a little wiggle in my ankle, and I was like, "Not today." Kind of saved it. I don't think the judges saw it, but I still knew it was theirs, and it was just like got the heart racing a little bit. But yeah, I feel like um, when people think of female bodybuilding, they think of like, the Shanique Grants or just like the people that are in women's bodybuilding, like the big built girls. And it's not just that. I mean, like in the bikini division, bikini is super competitive because almost everybody does their first show as a bikini girl. And it's like a glorified fitness model is like the best way I can describe it. Like take your ideal like Nike model with a bit more muscle.
It's a beauty pageant with muscles. Let's be completely honest.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't rank as high as I wanted to in my first show because my tan wasn't dark enough. So if that tells you anything about like the judging for that sport at that level, that should be it for you. So
I mean, with our skin color, we're gonna have to put on about 10 layers just to even get it to look like any semblance like it is,
oh
and
yeah.
that is just that is just so unfortunate. But what was that moment like for you when you got to walk up on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've been working on for months upon months?
It was amazing. It was terrifying and amazing at the same time because it was like, okay, like this is my moment. It doesn't last for very long, so I'm gonna make the most of it. And I just like kept my head up high, and I just was like strutting my. I had Eminem playing in my head, like trying to like get some like beats popping, even though they weren't actually there, and it felt absolutely incredible. Like I think prejudging was harder than my individual routine because you do have to kind of sit on display just absolute like picture perfect, and it takes way longer. Like I remember just being in my back pose and just shaking. And like one of like the older girls, you could tell she's like had done a couple shows before. She was like off to the side. She's just like, breathe, relax, you're doing great. And I was just like, oh my God, thank you. Like that was the other surprising thing too, was just how supportive everybody was. Like I honestly thought like people were gonna behave like they were in a beauty pageant almost, or like a toddlers and tiaras kind of situation. And everybody was actually like, super chill, super nice, super supportive. I made some friends that I still talk to, even though the only time I met them was in that show. Some of them actually became my teammates now. And yeah, like that moment, like there's nothing to really describe that because it was just like I don't know, with the team sports, like the biggest kind of moment you got that with that, like in softball, was like when you're up to bat. But even so, you're still like eyes are on the field. You know what I mean? And this for this second, like all eyes were on me, and I had never had that before. And it was like I'm not like a me, look at me kind of person. So it was just like whoa, like this is weird, but this is so cool.
No, yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand too is that like these competitors, like it becomes like a sisterhood for a lot of, especially the female ones. The male ones, not so much, not to the extent, but like they generally do have each other's back, and it's just because I think it's because it's the joint suffering where they know what you've went through, and they understand, so they're a lot more sympathetic, and that's a great aspect of the sport that isn't really talked about as much. But I mean, I gotta talk about post show blues because it's something that's very real, and a lot of people do not get that. Where so many people just assume that oh, hey, you must be able to maintain that look, 24/7 just because you've worked so hard to get to it. But they don't understand that. I mean, you've dieted yourself down. You've, with limiting your foods and water and everything that goes into it, your carbs, you're not going to be able to maintain that look. What was that like for you when you realized that, like, hey, this look that I've achieved, I mean, it's not going to be sustainable for me?
Oh God, that was so hard. It honestly like it kind of hit me probably 4 or 5 months after my show that that look was not attainable for me. I mean, it was brutal. And I didn't like I knew the consequences, but I didn't stick to my reverse properly. Like I had moments where like I would binge eat. Like I'm not like this is something where I never admitted it to it. I never admitted it to my coach either, even though I know I should have. But like I'm just now learning like the more like I've talked to like friends I've confided in who've gone through the same thing, like that it's normal to come off to your first show and basically have binge eating episodes. I mean, there was times where like they brought donuts to work and I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna eat one, and one turned into five pretty freaking quickly, and I feel like crap, and I'm still like I still want more, and it's like God, what is wrong with me? And I had all kinds of like hormone issues because of it. I found out my birth control too actually caused a lot of hormone issues for me as well. So like that got tossed out, and I finally just like felt like crap long enough about myself and the way I was like treating myself to where I was like, okay, like enough is enough. I'm not gonna like I'm gonna stick to the plan no matter what. I'm gonna do what feels like what actually feels good, not like what impulse feels good, but what actually feels good for me to put in my body. And I'm not going to look at myself for a single day in the gym. Like I'm going to wear a sweatshirt and sweatpants to the gym for the next month. And then we're going to come out of this and see how we do. And I think that helped a lot. Just like I didn't like as almost shameful as it sounds, like I didn't look in the mirror for a month unless it was to like brush my teeth or wash my face. But if I did, like I made sure I had like baggy clothes on. I would just like not look down when I showered. um, yeah, I didn't look at like I didn't try to see what kind of pump I was getting in the gym, anything like that. And then when I was done, I took it all off and I was like, okay, like I'm fine. I look fine. I look healthy. I don't need to be this hard on myself. Like, and then I looked back at prep photos then after that too, because that was another thing I got caught up in was like I was constantly looking at like my peak week photos. Like, God, I had such a nice stomach. Look at my legs. You could see every single line and crevice and everything. Like, why can't I have that again? Why can't that be like normal for me? And like, I also then like remembered how I felt, and I looked back at those photos, after like that month where I like I said, I didn't like look at myself in the mirror, and I looked back at those photos and I was like, oh my God, I look like sickly. Like like you get like the prep face where you have like no fat on your
The
face
skeleton face,
and
as
like
I call it.
yeah, you get the skeleton face, and I could tell I looked hungry. Like there were definitely things to like admire about it from a bodybuilding perspective. You can tell like, okay, that body is like a peak week body. But I was like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm doing okay. So the post show blues are a thing. I definitely didn't have the desire to jump back into another show pretty quickly after that. So that wasn't like the issue. I probably like I'm almost a year away from my most previous show now. I did the Brew City in June last year, at the end of June, so I'm almost a year away from that date last year. And now I'm probably starting to get the itch to compete again. I'm planning on probably doing a show May of 2022. But other than that, like I don't have nearly the amount of body dysmorphia that I did after coming out for that show.
Wait, so they did a show as early as June last year with COVID?
Yeah, that was one of the nice things about Wisconsin, because so I was originally planning on doing the Twin City Open, and unfortunately, between
The Twin City Open, is
oh,
that in Bloomington?
I believe so.
That's at my high school, my alma mater. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
think Los Championes or Campiones Jim runs
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, Bloomington Jefferson. Yeah, that's my high school, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was going to be there, except at the time, COVID, like just uncertainty with the governor with COVID, and then the riots kind of put a damper on that. So because it was just two safety concerns at the time instead of just COVID, they ended up shutting that down. So then I was like, okay, well, when are we going to compete? Like, I don't have money to travel across the country to compete right now because I was planning on just going to this big one in the cities, a 4-hour drive from me. And we ended up picking Brew City, which was actually, I think, 2 weeks sooner, 3 weeks sooner than what I was originally competing. So it's like, okay, like foot on the gas, like we gotta go now. Like it's like show's on. Like it's game time,
What
bitch.
was that like for you when COVID first came and, they shut down the gyms and everything? Like, how are you still able to maintain this health and fitness lifestyle? Because, I mean, so many people really struggled with that.
I think definitely having the show in mind kind of kept that going for me because I started my prep in January, so like I wasn't new to prep by any means at that point, but it was pretty difficult because there was still snow on the ground here for a long time. I think there was still snow on the ground till April, and even when the snow came off the ground, it was like we did not have a single sunny day, and it was just wet. So like I couldn't even go find a hill to go run up because it was just like, okay, I'm gonna come back and like I'm gonna be muddy just from the knees up. So I honestly, I would like fill suitcases with like pots and pans and like textbooks, like anything heavy in the house I could find. I would put it in a suitcase and lift it. I have a video of me squatting with my dog. So, like, and I tried to like start a trend like see a dog, squat a dog. It didn't take off, but yeah, I would squat her and then she'd like run away and wouldn't come back. So I have to wait like another week before I could squat her again. And I would do stuff with like my 20-pound bag of rice from Costco which would progressively get lighter as I would continue to eat, but it is what it is. I would do like these bicep circuits where I would like, I had like 2 gallon, like half gallons of like vegetable oil, 1 gallon, 2 gallons, yeah, and I would do like bicep curls with them for like 5 minutes straight. And then I would switch into like shoulder presses with them for 5 minutes straight and like just random crap like that. I had like a band set that a friend gave me. I snapped them within like the first 2 weeks. And so that was super depressing. So I had to really get creative. There's another video of me like laying on a towel and doing like a mock pull up with it with the banisters to my stairs. And like I would like grab the poles on the ground and I'd slide myself and then I turn into a shoulder press to like push back. Like there was, you had to get pretty creative. It was doable, but you had to get pretty creative. And then probably the more difficult thing was honestly cardio because we did not have any equipment. We didn't have money to buy equipment. Even if we did, it was all gone off Facebook Market, off Shields. Like you couldn't get it anywhere anyways within like a week of the shutdown starting. So we bought an elliptical off Facebook Marketplace for like $100 all the way out in Wapaton. Brought it back, lasted a week because it was some cheap Chinese elliptical where like the screws in it were ceramic painted to look like metal. So there wasn't any fixing it when that broke. So that turned into me doing circuits where I would, because I had like half-hour cardio sessions, so I would lunge back and forth in my basement and then sprint up the stairs until it was just time to stop. And then yeah, just go back down and lunge. Oh, and then salsa dance workouts on YouTube. Nobody was allowed to go down in the basement when I was doing that because trust me, you don't want to see that. But that was kind of where I came to. And then it finally got warm out enough to just dry up all of that wet, crappy mud. I was able to do hill sprints. It was freezing outside, but I still did it. I just bundled up, took my dog with me because she's a husky. She don't care. Did some hill sprints with it, and then a week later the gym opened up in Fargo. I think we were one of the first states to like open the gyms back up at the very least, so that was super nice. I mean, you had to book a time, but who cares? You got the gym.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned my career word, which is cardio. I hate it more than life itself. When I say cardio, I mean like actual running. Like I could walk for forever. Like I could walk a marathon and be totally fine with it. But unfortunately, when you do become a bodybuilder, you do have to sort of sign a deal with the devil when it comes to cardio. What is your relationship like with cardio?
Whew. So it's kind of hit or miss. Like I absolutely cannot stand running. I used to probably be one of the most cardiovascular fit people on my team. So like the actual act of cardio wasn't an issue for me, but doing it every single day when like there's times where you're just tired and you just want to go home and like eat your bison and your rice, like that was when it became like sucky because it's like, okay, like I just kicked my ass on my workout, like I got a good pump going, like I'm shredded, I'm so tired, crap, I still have 60 minutes of cardio. All right, let's go do it. And I did all my cardio on the Stairmaster,
Ugh.
all of it. And I didn't split it up. Like I would do all of it all at once and until peak week. Or sorry, the week before peak week. So like there were 2 weeks, I want to say, going into peak week where I had 90 minutes of cardio. That I broke up. Okay, I was like, okay, I'm gonna just bring my breakfast to the gym. I'm doing half of this fasted, and then the other half will be post workout, even though I was still exhausted post workout, but it was still better than 90 minutes of just straight Stairmaster. That was the worst. But like, other than that, like I would like up to 60 minutes, I think is probably what the most I did on that Stairmaster all at once. And like, I'm sure I pissed some people off because there were only 2 Stairmasters in the gym. And here I am sweating all over one of them for an extended period of time. But sorry.
I've never done Stairmaster myself. Have no interest in ever doing it. Unlike you, like if I ever had a 90-minute thing, like I've done 90 minutes before, I always do it in one thing because with me, after the first time doing something, I'm way too tired to like go and do it again. Where I'm just like, yeah, I can't get back on there. So I would have to, push through. But yeah, with that cardio, I mean, that is just, unfortunately, it's something that you really have to do. But the most important thing in this lifestyle, and I don't care what anyone says, is sleep. Anyone disagrees with me on that, I tell them pull an all-nighter and then go and try to work out and, Tell me how that works out for you. Twice that happened to me in college, and both times I lasted about halfway through and said, "Screw this, I'm going home and trying to sleep." What is your relationship like with sleep? Because I mean, I've had some people on the podcast, some of those freaks that can function off of like 3 hours of sleep, and then other ones where they're like normalish people. But especially when you get into prep, I mean, you are not going to get that proper amount of sleep 99% of the time, just because your body is so tired. Where I know it's kind of a conundrum where it's like your body is so tired, yet you can't sleep because your body is so tired. But what was that like for you? And I mean, especially in the off season now, are you able to recover some of your sleep, or what is your overall experience with sleeping like as you've transitioned into bodybuilding?
So I have never like I've always had to deal with having a lack of sleep between like my me being an athlete. Like in high school, I remember like there were so many times where we would have to, like we have school and then we have practice and we don't get home from practice till 9 o'clock at night. Hey, guess what? You still have to do, 3 hours worth of homework and then get up and do it all over again. And so like, college was just as hard, if not worse, between the traveling component added into everything and study hours and everything else, and just much harder coursework in general. So, like, I have never, I've always had to deal with having a lack of sleep. With prep, I didn't actually experience personally any sleep issues as far as like getting to sleep and staying asleep goes, probably until like the last 2 weeks. So I was actually very blessed with that. And I, honest to God, think part of it was because I was working night shift. So I would get up in the morning, and mind you, nobody else at my work at the time would lift in the morning if they worked night shift. Like they're like, you get up at 8 in the morning. Like I worked from 3 p.m. to one a.m. on paper every single day. And, I would wake up at 8 a.m. to go to the gym or to eat first and then go to the gym and get my workout in and then shower, walk the dogs and go to work. And nobody else did that. So I was already used to a schedule like that. But I think like just being so exhausted because like I had to work, like it wasn't a situation where it's like, okay, I worked, then I'm going to the gym. Oh, I'm tired. I want to go home. Like I had to stay at work. So I was kind of blessed in the sense where I did have like that designated time in the morning to dedicate to my workout. There were times where I couldn't get all of my cardio in the morning because of just time constraints. So it's like, oh, I want to sleep in like an extra hour today. So I would do my cardio in the morning, go to work, and then I have a key fob for the gym. So I'd go to the gym at like 2 a.m. and get my lift in. And I remember this one time where I was just so exhausted and I was trying to lift and I just like almost started crying because I was just so freaking tired and I just wanted to go home and eat a pancake and go to bed. And you just kind of push through it, you know. Like I said, I was still very blessed in the sense of like I didn't have any issues actually like getting to bed, but getting enough sleep was it. I think it hurt me to some degree, as far as like the actual enjoyability of like my prep, and it probably made things harder for me in my prep too, as far as like nutrition goes. Like we probably had to cut food maybe more than we wanted to because I didn't get enough sleep and recovery. But I mean, it is what it is. You learn from everything. At least now I'm in a position where I am my own boss. I get to make my own schedule. So when my time comes around for a bodybuilding show, hopefully I can manage my time a little bit better in that sense. But yeah, I honestly, I didn't know that sleep had that big of an importance. Like I knew it was important, but my whole life it's like, I can sleep when I'm dead. Like that's what me and my dad told each other all the time. I'll sleep when I'm dead. And so it was just something where it's like, okay, well, sleep is on the last, it's on the bottom of my priority list. I need to get everything else in first. I'll sleep later.
Yep. So many people make that mistake, and I am not gonna lie, I was in that area too. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, Bre, we made the decision, you can change one thing about, the health and fitness lifestyle or bodybuilding, you can do both, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Just the stigma that if you walk into a gym, you're gonna end up this muscled up freak show just by going to the gym 2 times a week. It's like how freaking arrogant are you to think that like that's all you need like you just look at a weight and you're going to get jacked or start looking like a man. Like that's not how this works. Like please stop. Oh, you lift weights? I mean, well, you look really strong, I can tell. Yeah, it's because I've been lifting weights for 10 years. Like I try to I lift what I think is heavy. You know, it might not be what like Arnold Schwarzenegger think is heavy, but I lift what I think is heavy. What's heavy for me, and I'm still not a ginormous person by any means. So if that's how it works, then I'm doing something wrong. Please tell me what I'm doing wrong. But that's probably the biggest stigma that pisses me off, or that like I don't know. Oh, now I'm having a brain fart a little bit.
No worries. No, for me too, it's somewhat similar to that too as well. And yeah, people just do not understand that that's not going to be the case for you. But yeah, just other stigmas too is that, a lot of people assume that people that go to the gym aren't nice and stuff like that. Like they're mean and stuff. And it's like, no, they're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. That's another one that I hear of all the time too.
Oh yeah, like, oh, I don't want people looking at me and judging me. And like what I tell them is like,
No one
you're
cares.
there.
First of all, no one cares about
Literally
you when you're in the
nobody
gym.
cares.
Yeah, yeah. No one
Yeah,
cares.
literally nobody cares. And if anybody does care, they're there for the wrong reasons, and you can tell them just get out. Like as far as I care, like they're there for the wrong reasons. This is a place where you work on you, them they work on them, and if they have anything to say about it, like they aren't supposed to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you on that. And I mean, if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at just in your health and fitness journey, just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved?
I'd like for my business to be completely up and running. I'd like to have a new show under my belt for sure. Potentially, I'm still actually kind of debating on this. I'm not sure if I want to compete in bikini or figure next year. So I'm training like I want to be figure, and then when we start prep, I think is when I'm going to determine if I'm bikini or figure. So that's actually something that's kind of in the running, just because I have a pretty good structure for both. It's just I'm not quite. I personally don't think I'm going to be quite big enough for figure, but I have some friends telling me, "Oh yeah, you should do figure. You're getting pretty big." So it's kind of one of those things where we'll see. But I'd like to definitely have another show under my belt. Hopefully have a house by then as well. I'm sick of renting. So like a little life hack for you. People, don't throw your money away on rent. It gets expensive. But yeah, I just hope a business is up and running, and I can just continue being happy and healthy and inspiring people and just be a good coach.
Absolutely. And I mean, we wish you nothing but the best in that. And lastly, if someone were to walk up to you and say, like, hey, I want to get started in my health and fitness journey, what's the best piece of advice that you'd like to give them? Because, I mean, it's kind of a crappy question because everyone's body is different, but like generally, like, what would you like to say to them? Because I find for so many people, just to take that first step in the gym, I mean, once you take that, I mean, it becomes so hard for you to walk out without getting your workout in.
Yeah, I tell them that the hardest part is getting started. Because they almost think themselves out of it. And when you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense because our bodies naturally want to do the laziest thing possible. And I'm not calling people lazy. I'm just saying evolutionary. You think about what is most energetically fit, that is it, like I mean, like what happens like if you teach a baseball softball kid how to feel the ground ball, they stick their butt in the air and bend down rather than bending their legs to go get the ball because it's the easiest thing possible for their body to do. Same thing goes with fitness. The brain's like, ooh, physical activity, I want to be as energetically fit as possible, I want to stay on the couch. And I don't think people intentionally do it. I just think they haven't given the weight room or just whatever fitness opportunity might be a good fit for them a real shot. So the hardest part is honestly getting started, like finding something that gets you active and makes you feel good, and then gaining confidence in that so you keep doing it. And then once you get there, like it's hard to pull you away. If anything, it's not going to be hard to get you there anymore. It's going to be hard to get you home from there.
No, 100%. And is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I'd like to give a shout out to my coach Haley Wagner, and then I'd like to also give shout outs to my Power by Design fitness team, Kayla Forcier, Alicia Sayak, and Eric Sweeney.
I've had Alicia Sayak on the podcast before.
Oh, okay. Yep, she's a good friend of mine, and so they are just absolutely amazing people. They are what really inspired me to become a full time personal trainer and nutrition coach. Um, just they have helped me every step of the way, and just inspired me to just get on my feet and just make the big transition and go. So I'm very grateful for that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below, and I'll leave a link to her Instagram page. Everyone, make sure that you go and give her a follow. Like I always warn everyone, you will get inspired to, get off that couch and stop eating those Twinkies and get in shape. But again, Bre, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. I mean, I honestly wish you nothing but the best, and I look forward to having you on it again.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Thank you again so much for having me here. It's been awesome. It's been a blessing, and I hope you enjoy some sunshine.
I'll try. I don't know. I'll wait till the sun goes down to go for my walk tonight. So we'll see. But again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.